Last night, I went to Courtney's with Dee. We dared Court to chug some beer, and we all got a little carried away. We all had beer, Mike's Hard, and a cooler. Ugh, hangovers. But now that I've done it, I wonder why I made such a big deal when my sister did it. If it's gonna happen again, I have to promise to not be stupid. I mean, I don't want to get in trouble with this. For more than 2 decades, I have written in a diary almost every single day. And guess what? I saved them all. Each week, I will be reading from one of these archives and getting to know myself from the lens of my 10, 16, 25, and 36-year-old self. We'll explore big topics such as body image, queerness, divorce, addiction, mental health, and friendship. I'll read cringy poems and attempt to find compassion for the painful tenderness of my younger self. Join the drama of me and my guests as we explore our boy-crazy, closeted, angsty selves, one stupid page at a time. Hello, and I am so glad you're here for episode 5. I'm hoping the sound quality is a little bit better today because I am working on building a little podcast studio in my basement at my home. And right now it's just a big empty room, so I'm sure there's a little bit of echo, but starting next week, I guess, I'm going to be DIY soundproofing some of the walls, and I'm going to be setting up my amazing comfy chair that I bought at a Habitat for Humanity here in London where I live. I went thrift store shopping for furniture for my podcast studio with my friend Candace. Shout out to Candace because Candace is a listener and a lot of you are listeners. I'm getting a lot of really beautiful comments from friends and clients and people who I haven't really talked to in a while, reaching out saying, I listened to the podcast, I loved the episode. I've gotten tons and tons and tons of amazing feedback on my last episode, which was an interview with my friend Maria Mosca. And it has led me down the road of thinking, hey, maybe I want to have some more podcast guests. So before I start today's episode, I wanted to invite you to be a guest on my podcast. Obviously, this is a podcast where I read journal entries from yesteryear. Yep, that's right. I said yesteryear. So if you are somebody who journaled a lot when you were younger or has a very active writing practice, and you're somebody who has like a whole bunch of scraps of paper with random notes on them, or that you have like a dedicated journaling practice, I would love to talk to you. And I would love to hear you read a couple journal entries on this podcast. I would love to record an episode with you. I'd love to interview you. I'd love to chat with you. I'd love to hear what makes you tick, what makes you excited, what makes you sad, scared, happy, all the things. So again, this is my humble invitation to invite you as a guest on this podcast. So to reach out to me to let me know that you would like to be a guest on this podcast, you can actually, if you're listening to this on Spotify, you can actually respond to the question that is linked under this episode, or you can always email me at olinyky@gmail.com. Another thing I'm going to be in the process of is making, like a fancy website for the podcast and making, its own email address and all the things. I'm just taking my time over here, everybody. I'm taking my time. I'm not rushing the process. Just today, actually, I sent out a newsletter to everybody, just saying that this podcast has taught me a lot about imperfection and embracing imperfection. And it's been, I want to say challenging, but that's not the right word. It's been so awesome. It's been challenging, but it's been awesome. It's been awesome to just put this out. Put a podcast episode out every week or two and not care about the scheduling. You know, this whole week I've had record episode 5 on my to-do list, and it's Thursday, and, you know, I'm just getting to it now. But there's no schedule, there's no rules, there's no preciseness, I'm not putting myself in a box here. Like, I tend to do that because I am a bit of a perfectionist, and I want things to be enjoyed, but sometimes even more than that, I want people to say, wow, Yoda did a really good job on that. Like, you know, I want the gold sticker, I want the gold star, I want the A+++. And it's funny how that comes out in different areas of my life. And this podcast, as well as my newsletter, which you can subscribe to, maybe I'll put the link in the bottom of this podcast description. But both of those things are teaching me big lessons about perfectionism and what it means to put yourself out in the world as a creative person without being perfect. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, and I think it's going to come out a lot in this journal that I'm going to read today. So this journal is from 2001. It's the one that follows the journal that I read in episode 3. So just a little recap. In episode 3, I had just started 8th grade. Very soon after my first day of school, September 11th, happened, and I wrote a little bit about that. I'm also having a lot of inner conflict with myself and outer conflict with my older sister, who is 2 years older than me. So she's in high school at this point, and she's going through her own adolescence and being very judgmental towards her. I'm also fighting with my parents quite a bit. There's a lot of angst in my household because my parents' marriage is not going super. They're trying to shield it from us, but they're not doing a very good job. And also, both my parents are struggling, I think, with just having 2 teenagers in the house. So that's kind of where this one starts. This one actually starts on New Year's Day of 2001. 2002. There we go, 2002. So let's get into it. So I start off this diary talking about New Year's Eve. Again, I'm in 8th grade. I have gone over to my friend Courtney's house with my friend Dee is still one of my best friends to this very day, hoping that she will come on the podcast also someday and discuss my teenage angst with me. But, so yeah, we've gone to Courtney's house and we have chugged what sounds like a beer and a cooler and a Mike's Hard Lemonade between the 3 of us. I don't know, maybe it was more. It probably wasn't even that. And I am already concerned about how much I liked the feeling. So later that day I write, perfect way to start the year, sarcastic, getting drunk and then yelling at my sister until my head hurt. She can be, sorry, I'm like, it says she can be such an ass, but I have crossed out the word ass and just like, it's like I don't want to swear in my diary. She can be such an ass. She's stealing, smoking, drinking, and sleeping around as if that's going to prove anything. I mean, I'm a poser and all, but at least I know it. I don't really think she realizes it. By the way, my sister, again, she's 16, and she is probably, like, my sister, compared to me, was straight edge compared to me. I mean, she went through a phase of sort of, you know, drinking and smoking, but it was short-lived compared to mine. And also, I don't think she ever really liked the feeling of, you know, being drunk or being high, or maybe if she did, there were other aspects of that lifestyle that she didn't like, and it didn't last very long. And I mean, my sister's never been, you know, a badass or a heavy drinker or misbehaved or anything like that. She's like, even now, but I mean, of course, she has other stuff. She has her other ways of coping and numbing and all that stuff, which maybe I'll get into in this diary. I'm not sure. But when I was 14 and she was 16, she was in that phase. And I think I was also heading into that phase much earlier than her. And I think I think I was more jealous of her than anything. But again, we went through this short stint where I was very, we had a lot of conflict, and we were really mean to each other. And my sister and I are really close now, and we have been for most of our lives. But like I said, we went through this phase at that age where we really didn't get along. And what's interesting is, like, I know what's coming in this diary. So New Year's Eve of grade 8, I get drunk for my first time. And then very soon after that, I start drinking like fairly regularly. And then it was in the summer of grade 8 going into grade 9 where my sister kind of invited me into her circle, and I started hanging out with some people that were quite a bit older than me. And it was during that summer where my alcoholism really took off, and I started using drugs. I started the path to my really troubled years kind of started there. But it hasn't happened yet, but it's like on the precipice. So just, you can listen for that in these upcoming entries. So I continue this journal entry in a really strange way, and I'm embarrassed to read this, but I'm going to, because it's such like a 14-year-old thing to write in 2002. Like this, I don't know what age you are, listener, but a lot of people I think are around my age demographic that are listening to this, and this is like so quintessentially that. So I say, I got asked an interesting question. What are you? As in, are you a prep? Punk? I honestly have no idea. So I said, I've got all of high school to figure that out, but most people seem to think I need to know before that. I'm not a priss. I'm willing to get dirty or wet or break the rules. Okay. I'm not a jock because, let's face it, I suck at school sports. And then I wrote the word volleyball and a bunch of like sad, angry faces beside it. I'm not an intellectual because I hate drama, whatever that means. I'm not a punk because, well, I'm not. I don't know what I am or why I just stereotyped everyone so badly, but I need to know. Should I be smart for mom and dad and William? Should I be bitchy for Kevin or flirty for Jeremy? Should I be a punk for my sister or a priss for Omi and Opie? What do I want for me? I like writing. That's what I know. So the end of this entry is like, I'm like so embarrassed and gutted, and also just like, this is, oh my gosh, like I want to hug myself so bad. This line, should I be smart for mom and dad? Like, this is where my perfectionism was, I mean, it was born long before this, but this is where it started thriving. Anyways, and another entry where I'm kind of ruminating on what's going on with my sister, and I just say, another interesting day. My sister admitted to me that she kissed Ryan, that she drinks a lot, and she's shoplifted. She says she only steals underwear. I'm not sure if I'm happy because she told me or just disappointed in her. She thinks I don't know anything. So yeah, I'm feeling really, I think, disconnected from my sister as she goes through her sort of like teenage awakening. Next entry. I'm going shopping with mom and Jenny today. My sister, I don't know why I keep referring to her as my sister. My sister's name is Jenny, so we'll just put that up there so you all know. I'm going shopping with mom and Jenny today. Dad is yelling at Jenny to get off the phone. She is yelling back. Sometimes I wonder why Dad bothers. He knows that she's never going to listen, and I wonder why she doesn't. It would make life so much easier. Sometimes I think she should just go out and do something bad, and then she'd need Dad's help, and they'd apologize, and we'd all be happy. But that will likely never happen. Next page, right after this, like, profound emotional paragraph, I say, anyways, I think I'm going to start a website. I've got a lot to say, but nowhere to say it. So, okay, I need to say something. This is right before I found Dead Journal. So for those of you who don't know what Dead Journal is, Dead Journal was a magical, horrifying place on the internet where it was like a sub-genre website of LiveJournal. So LiveJournal was basically like kind of like Tumblr or just like a blog space where you could, it was like before Twitter and Instagram, even before Facebook. And basically you would just journal online and you could have followers and people could comment. And there was this little section at the bottom where you could put like song lyrics and you could have like a little avatar and a little bio. And it was kind of like the first place for me at that age where that existed. And Dead Journal was the same thing, except it was like its tagline was that it was for people that were too emo for LiveJournal, which is really, really funny, like really funny because people who had LiveJournals were already pretty emo. So I had a Dead Journal and I found it. So I'm actually going to skip ahead. I'm going to read from this Dead Journal. So basically, again, in January of 2002, just after New Year's, I wrote in my diary, anyways, I think I'm going to start a website. I've got a lot to say, but nowhere to say it. April 7th was the day I launched my Dead Journal. So this is fast forwarding a little bit. The fact that you guys have no idea how hard I worked to find my Dead Journal. I'm not going to publish like the URL or anything because I need to sift through this and see like what is allowed to go into the outside world. Because I started this in April of grade 8, so right before I start high school, and my last entry of this is 4 years later or 5 years later, right before I go to college. So it's like really a time capsule of the most angsty years of my life. I didn't have a ton of followers there, but I did make some really good internet friends. Again, this is like now in my life, so many of my friends are like internet friends, people I've met through poetry communities and blogs and all of that. But back then it was like a lot less common because not even like it wasn't even there were kids in my class who didn't even have the internet at this age, right? So this was very very avant-garde. Anyways, this is the first entry of my Dead Journal. I'm just going to read this one, and then maybe in a future episode, I will unpack my Dead Journal a little bit. But so it goes like this, 2:43 p.m. This is my first entry, as you can probably see. I'm not sure why I made this account. I found out about Dead Journal from Jordan's site, which is totally awesome and deserving, I must add. Sidebar, Jordan was my first ever pen pal, who is still my pen pal. And wow, we've been pen pals for 22 years. I don't think I realized that. I knew we'd been pen pals for a long time, but that's even longer, maybe 23 years. And Jordan, like me, was very, very emo and very into Dead Journal. I'll tell more about that story later, but I need to keep this podcast to like an hour, so I'm gonna keep moving forward here. But I will talk about how I met Jordan at a different juncture. Okay, so I found out about Dead Journal from Jordy's site. As I said, I don't know why I made this account. I suppose to share my feelings and let you know the real me, since I don't have a website up yet and won't for a while, if ever. My weekend was okay, I suppose. I didn't do much. On Friday, I made bread for the manor in Thorndale for community service hours. I remember that. I need 40 and I only have 2. I'm going to need to get 38 hours in the next 3 months. Then on Saturday, I cleaned and then went shopping. Mom says you're not a real woman until you can blow $200 or more on a single trip to the shoe store. I bought a pair of $2 sandals, if that counts for anything. Then I went to the movies with Dee. We went to see National Lampoon's Van Wilder. It was pretty good, even though I'm against Tara Reid. Blech. Anyways, I bought Yogenfrus, 2 of them, and a black tank top for graduation. Speaking of graduation, I'm really nervous about it. So many awards, so many dresses and bow ties and things to be said. I don't know who will be valedictorian yet. It's going to be funny seeing everyone dress up and get all frilly and frou-frou. Dressing up makes everyone feel stupid, or at least me. I refuse to wear a dress, though. I'm wearing a black suit. Ha, just to bug my mom. I'm excited about this summer, too. It'll be my last 2 months of sheer and utter bliss. Well, actually, my last moment of bliss was the moment right before the doctor yelled, "Just one more push" to my mom. Oh my God, so fucking emo. Let's try one of these lists my therapist keeps telling me about. I'm going to make a list of pros and cons about the situation. Okay, the good things about going to high school are: number 1, there are more people to choose from. Like right now, I have to be friends with certain people because of the lack of people. I think this is a reference to the fact that my grade 8 graduating class had like 21 students in it. And I was going to a high school that wasn't a huge high school by any means, but it probably had like 500 students as opposed to like 120 students. Number 2, you can go off the school property for lunch. Oh my God, what a highlight. Because again, I went to school in literally the middle of like 5 fields, or like when I was in grade 8. And I was going to, again, not a city, but it was like a little village where they had like a pizza place and like a variety store. So I'm really moving up in the world here. Number 3, you can skip classes if you want. I'm already into the idea of skipping class, which I think is pretty funny. Number 4, you can chew gum at school. This is the best part. I stand by that. I think when I was in grade 8 and I would try to sneak gum and my teacher would be like, "Spit out your gum." I thought that was like the stupidest rule. And 5, I get dismissed from school an hour earlier. The bad things about being in high school. Number 1, I will lose some of the people I truly cherish. This is an ongoing theme and big, big fear for like the remainder of this year and this diary. Number 2, no recess. I'm going to absolutely hate this. Recess is what I look forward to these days. Oh my gosh, that's such like a... It's so funny that I wrote that 4 months after I wrote this line about like getting drunk for my first time. Like I'm in this weird nebulous time of like in between wanting so badly to grow up and wanting so badly to just stay a kid. And that sentence really highlights that for me. Number 3, the work is harder, like with any new year, but with this year, I will be expected to do so much better. So again, there's some of those parental pressures. Number 4, high school sucks. That's just it. It's in the center of a crappy city, which wasn't even a city. But number 5, it's easier to get in trouble. Along with freedom comes danger, I suppose. A little foreshadowing. Anyways, that's all I can come up with. I just know I'll hate going there and I'm going to miss grade 8 so much. Anyways, I best be going. All right, back to the journal in front of me. In the next entry, I have gotten into a fight with my best friend Katie, and I write, Dee said, "You're running away from the truth." That's so true. That's exactly what I'm doing, but it's a hell of a lot easier than facing, and who knows what the truth is anyway. But anyway, maybe that's what this book will be filled with. Questions with no answers, finding myself. Or maybe that's all bullshit. Maybe there's no me to be found. Again, I am a flaming emo kid at this time in my life. But yeah, that made me a little bit sad. So the next couple entries is, there's this one where my sister's friend, one of my sister's best friend, got kicked out of her house. Her parents kicked her out for some reason, and she came to stay with us for a few days. Her name's Andrea. And it was kind of a weird dynamic because her older sister used to babysit us when we were young. And I was worried, I think, about my sister spending so much time with her because she was having a lot of behavioral problems. So this entry goes like this. I'm always saying how Andrea is bad for Jenny, but Jenny is so happy. One more thing to be jealous of her for. She's actually got real friends. Oh my God, this is so wholesome. In my Chicken Soup for the Soul book, it asks, what makes a good friend? I said, someone who understands why I hate it here, why I love running, why my family is different, why I'm so competitive, and why I dress the way I do. They have to understand that and not just pretend to. Also, they can have fun, but they know when to be serious. They help you regardless of the seriousness of the problem. Well, my answer has changed a lot. Now, I'd have to say, well, the first part is accurate, but I'd also say someone who won't ask me why I'm crying, but will cry with me. Someone who would take the blame in a bad situation. A person who believes enough in me to tell me when I'm making an ass out of myself. Someone who wouldn't give up their dreams for me. And someone who would never choose a boy over a friend. Anyways, school is canceled today. Okay, there's 2 big events coming up in this diary. We're still in January, but first things first is my first mention of MSN Messenger. Do y'all remember MSN Messenger? Again, if you were born in like the late 80s, early 90s, you definitely remember MSN Messenger because it was a staple of our adolescence. So if you don't know what MSN Messenger is, it's just basically like, it's just a chat room for you and your friends. And same thing, you could have a username, and I usually put like a little song lyric there. And we would rush home from school. I would run off the bus to get to the computer first, where we had dial-up internet, to get to the computer first so that I could go on MSN before my sister. And I would talk to like Jason, even though we had just been at school together all day, or I would talk to Katie, or I would talk to like other kids from my class. And this was my first introduction to like flirting with boys and girls, I think. So this entry starts off with, I was just talking to Kyle Burgers online. Every time I talk to him, I just want to get to know him more. Him and Rachel are in a fight. He says he might break it off for good. I'm debating calling Rachel to warn her. I probably shouldn't, but I'm just worried about them, both of them. And that is, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just, I'm feeling very nostalgic about the MSN of it all. Next big event that happens is a little bit more serious. So I have a huge blowout with my mom. So backstory is my mom came to my school for not career day, but it was so in grade 8, we were learning about like the basics of algebra and statistics. And my mom, when I was growing up, was a statistician. She worked in the math department at a university. She did like strategies for efficiency for a big corporation. She had a really good job, and she was really, really smart, still is. And my teacher and her arranged for her to come in and like do a presentation on statistics while we were doing statistics in our math program. And I don't remember how I felt leading up to it. Like, I'm sure I was looking forward to it, or maybe I was dreading it. I don't know. But my mom came and she did this really cool presentation where she talked about like the probability of certain things happening using a catapult, that this little mini tabletop wooden catapult that she had my dad help her build. And if you got a question right, she would like catapult a chocolate bar at you, which was like, again, very cool. And all the kids in my class loved it. And it was going swimmingly. And I had an internal shame spiral because my mom showed up to the school wearing like a very informal, like she looked like she just came from like cleaning the bathroom or something. Like she just looked like she just didn't look presentable. And I felt embarrassed of her because a lot of most of my friends had moms who didn't work, or like, again, this is a long time ago, but like a lot of my friends had moms who were stay-at-home moms and dads who worked. That was kind of like the classic dynamic. And a lot of the moms were just these cute, put together women who baked cookies for the bake sale and volunteered for field trips and all the things. And I just really wanted my mom to at least try. And when I was growing up, like much younger than this, I was always embarrassed by my mom because we were really poor until my mom got this great job. And then we weren't really that poor anymore. And my mom never changed anything about her external self. And I think I was really bothered by that. And again, I'm embarrassed now to say that the fact that like I lost it on my mom because of how she presented herself. It's funny because I remember therapy 5 years ago or so, and like I went through this event with my therapist, and I ended up actually going over to my mom's apartment and like apologizing to her, because basically what happened was she does this presentation, everything's great, all the kids love it. The class is dismissed. My mom's cleaning up, and she has this idea that she's now picking me up from school and we're going to go to get dinner and celebrate. She's just like so happy she's done a good job. And I tell her that I'm mortified by her and that I'm taking the bus home. And I left. And I cannot imagine how hurtful that was I can imagine. It's so hurtful and harmful and mean. And like I said, I have apologized and made this right with my mom since, but at the time, you could blame it on hormones or dysregulation or whatever, but I was very much, I just wanted her to be different, like I just wanted her to not embarrass me. And my mom was always embarrassing me. To this day, I would say I still have a pretty big fear of like my mom embarrassing me. She wasn't like any of the other moms. And there was a couple things that she did over the next couple years that were really awful. This was not one of them. This was me being awful. So that's what this entry is about. And at the end of it, I say, anyways, I got home and talked to mom. I ended up yelling, and dad came in the room, and so I yelled at him about butting out. Mom and I made up, and she told me to go apologize to my father. Dad, I'm sorry for yelling at you, but I need you to know when to butt out. Don't talk to me that way. Sorry, you need to excuse yourself from conversations that don't involve you. And then I say, what, you have nothing to say to that? My dad just says no. Now, soon, he'll come in and either tell me not to talk back or that he's sorry. I'll let you know. So not only am I struggling with my relationship with my sister, but I'm also really struggling with my relationship with my mom and my dad. So just things at home are not, they're not going great. The next day, I go on to a tour of the high school that I'm going to attend very soon. And I basically say that it like wasn't that bad and that I met some new kids that I'm probably going to be going to school with. And I'm kind of surprised that it's not like a drama-filled day and I'm not like feeling super anxious about it, but that's how it happened. There's this entry that I wanted to read because it's so interesting. Like, it's such an innocent, like, entry in the middle of all of this chaos. So I'm going to the mall with some friends. So I start off book. When we got to the mall, we were somewhat bored, but later, after we decided on what movie to watch, it became very fun. Dee and Elise went to go get popcorn from Colonel's, which is like a popcorn store in the mall. But we couldn't sneak it in, so we bought gummy things from the dollar store and asked for a big bag. It turned out to be see-through. We were going to buy something from the Gap because they have dark bags, but I got the idea to put Dee's coat in the bag wrapped around the popcorn to hide it. It was so funny. When we got to the theater, we saw the Royal Tenenbaums. Dee opened her pop and it exploded all over her. It was so funny too. It was a great day, but I doubt we'll be invited back. And I just love like the innocence of this entry. It like really shows again how I'm kind of trapped in this world of like all this stuff that's going on at home, but I'm also just like at the mall with my friends, having big laughs, like smuggling in popcorn. But alas, it doesn't last. So for the next couple of entries, I'm going to give a content warning and say that this next little bit is about disordered eating, and I'm going to basically throw it all out on the line and share with you how my disordered eating began, or at least this is when it starts flourishing. This entry starts with, "Today was a bad day. One of those days where I feel ugly. I hate my frizzy hair, baggy eyes, big nose, and worst of all, I feel fat, and I need to diet harder. I'm going to cut my rations in half. Fruit for breakfast, veggies and fruit and crackers for lunch, something light for dinner, no snack." I'm reading that slowly because it's hard to read. Again, I am 14 years old, and it's not a mystery to me. It's not a mystery to me how or why my disordered eating began. And also, I think it's important to say that, like, I don't blame the people in my life for my disordered eating, but I will say that my sister and I both struggled a lot. I would say we both had eating disorders at different stages of our lives, and we both still struggle with disordered eating to this day. And I think we've both done like a lot of healing and stuff around it, but my sister had a bit more of an intense bout of anorexia and bulimia, whereas I dabbled in both anorexia and excessive exercising was kind of my form of bulimia. And my sister got quite sick for a while. I think it was probably when I was around this age. And the next entry is a little bit more about that. The other thing that was happening at this time that's, again, I don't blame anyone for this, but I'm certainly aware of the gasoline was kind of pouring on the fire. Was that my mom was a really avid yo-yo dieter at this time. She struggled with her weight. She was in Weight Watchers at this time, and she had a scale. There was a scale next to the fridge, and she would weigh herself and then write her weight on a whiteboard on the fridge. And she had a picture of herself at her thinnest when she was probably in high school. And she had Post-it notes on, the peanut butter that said, "This is fattening." And so we were very exposed to diet culture. This entry, I think, really, really highlights it. So this is a couple entries later where at the beginning, I talk about how my sister's quite sick. And I say, Jenny kept saying how she needs to go on Slim Fast and all this stuff about her being fat. I mean, she's just 110 pounds and she calls herself fat. I feel fat, though. My thighs, my stomach. My diet isn't working. I just need to shrink my stomach. I eat huge amounts of healthy food, so when it comes to junk food, I think I can eat huge amounts of it too. Maybe that's how Nicole is so thin. Her stomach, it's just so tiny, healthy food or not. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Starting tomorrow, I need to get skinny for graduation. I want to be fit too, ... gym, ... I need to go to the gym, ... I'll ask Mom. And then in big capital letters at the end of this entry, it just says, by graduation, I will like how I look in a bathing suit. Next entry. About my dieting. It's so weird how I have no willpower. I say all the time about how I don't care what people think, and I don't need anyone's approval or attention to like myself, but then I go and watch what I eat, and I'm not doing a very good a job at that. I need to find a way to manage my weight. Next entry. This one surprises me because I've always assumed that the reason why I don't have a memory of my parents, my story is that my parents didn't notice my disordered eating and a lot of things. And there's reasons for that. I mean, I think my parents' marriage breakdown was beginning its evolution. This was around this time, was the Big Bang, and it was the unraveling and the slow unraveling and the slow burn that really broke them both and distracted them from parenting and from noticing what was going on with their kids. But in this entry, I mean, it's kind of counterintuitive to that story because it just says, it's talking about my day at the beginning. William was in a good mood today. Today was a good day, blah, blah, blah. And then it said, Dad came up to me in my room and asked, "Are you anorexic?" I later asked him why, and he claimed, "You're so skinny, like Ally McBeal." That compliment should hold up for a while. Anyways, I best be going. So, I mean, Ally McBeal. I mean, Calista Flockhart was like the epitome of skinny. And I took that to heart, like I wanted to be as skinny as Calista Flockhart. I think that was probably one of my thin idols, which is really sad. I'm going to read one more entry just because I don't want to read this entry. Like, I don't want to keep hitting this nail on the head, but I'm getting towards the end of this journal and I'm sharing it with you because it is so painful for me to look back on and see how much of my journaling is just consumed with my weight, and how that has never changed. It's never gone away. The journal, my current journal of 2024, 36-year-old me, like, I'm still journaling about my eating habits and like how I can consume less and be smaller. And it's just like the reflection is that I can see that there's more healing to be done, right? I think now back then my disordered eating was a constant, and today I would say it ebbs and flows, and it's much less extreme and intense. But it's still in the background. It's kind of how I feel about that. But this is when it was very loud and very constant. And this is one of the last entries I'll read. It says, I'm starting to hate my face as much as I hate my body. I hate this skin I'm in. I constantly think about how fat I am and how frizzy my hair is and how my chest, or lack thereof, is so small. I'll never be pleased with the way I look, except today I skipped lunch and I actually felt really good all day. Tomorrow I'm going to try to get rid of the bagel for breakfast and just have a slim fast. It pisses me off to no end that I do this to myself. It's such a teenager thing to do. I don't want to lose myself, but I just don't want to be fat. And again, it's devastating me to read that and to it's not a surprise where that came from. Like my mother's biggest concern and fear in life was being fat, and I saw it all around me, not just with my mom. I saw it with my grandmother and my aunts and my friends' moms, and in the media. And I mean, at this time, like all the biggest celebrities were fat, were really skinny. And I remember like Oprah was really big at that time, and Oprah was always talking about, like, Oprah rode in on an elephant to her stage and claimed that, like, over the course of that year, that's how much weight her audience had lost, was like the weight of this elephant. Like, it was kind of just like in your face all the time. And anyways, I got into this a little bit more than I was anticipating in this episode, and I do want to just like give that cautionary content note that I hope, if this is impacting you, that you take really good care of yourself after listening. I can't avoid talking about this on this podcast if I'm going to be reading back from entries from my younger self. This was just like at the center of so much of my life, especially my adolescence. I mean, this is where it, like I said, this is where it, where the actual eating disorder started. When I started realizing that if I skipped meals, that I felt thinner. And I never went through any formal treatment. I didn't actually admit out loud at all that I had an eating disorder until I was like 34 years old. And like I said, I still struggle with it to this day, and it's making me really emotional to talk about it. And if it's making you emotional too, I just want to send you a lot of love and encourage you to take a really, really deep breath. All right, I'm going to read one more entry after a short break, and then I'm going to read you a poem, and I'm going to make it a hopeful poem so that we can wrap up this episode on a hopeful note. So stay tuned. All right, so there's one more life event that happens in this journal, and this is going to be the last one that I read from this journal. I lost someone. My friend from school. Her mom passed away. Obviously a very formative time to lose a parent. And this particular friend, her mom had been very sick. She had cancer, and this was at a time where a cancer diagnosis often meant death. And she passed away. And I was really close, like, because my class was so small, there was only, 8 or 10 girls. We were all friends, but me and this particular girl, we were really, really close. And I spent a lot of time at her home with her mom. And I'm sure you've heard in previous episodes where I write about God and I use the word God. And I was quite religious, but not in the way that you might expect, where like my family was religious and we all went to church as a family, because that's not the case. My family is the opposite of religious. My dad dabbled in Buddhism different times of his life, but is pretty much agnostic. He actually doesn't even identify as agnostic. He identifies as a scientist. If you ask him what his religion is, he would say science. And then my mom is was born as a Jehovah's Witness and left the church in her early 20s, and has liked to study religion and is kind of fascinated by it, and has been to a handful of different churches and experimented, but I wouldn't say she belongs to a religious denomination either. But I was really curious about religion because of this friend. Because when I went to her house for, after school or for dinner on weekends, her family seemed so happy and normal and serene. And I was so jealous of it, and I just wanted it. I thought, what is the secret sauce? What is the recipe for this? Because whatever it is, I'll do it. Having dinner at their home was the exact opposite of dinner time at my house. Dinner time at my house was, at some point, I walked up to the stove and grabbed a plate and put whatever was on the stove that my mom had cooked onto the plate, and then went to my room to eat it while I, listened to music or whatever. And then everybody ate in their separate quarters, and my mom sat down and read her book, and my dad sat down and, watched TV. And that was, sometimes there was yelling, and sometimes we all hung out, but it was very isolated and private and chaotic. And when I went to Carolyn's house, they all gathered around the table and they prayed. And then after the meal, and during the meal, we would all talk about our day. And then at the end, the mom and dad would both do the dishes together and dry them by hand. And then they would dance in the kitchen. And all I wanted was to be around that. And at some point, I figured that the secret sauce was church and God. And I don't even necessarily think I was wrong about that. And I asked my mom if I could go to church with them, and she said yes. And so I started going to church with this family. I was about maybe 11 or 12, and I went with them, I think, up until the mom died. And then I think I found my own church after that. And so I went to church by myself for most of my teenage years and my adult life. And it was always a part of my life. And I'm going to get more into this later, but I wanted to share just how strange I was when I was that age. Just such a weird story. But I was really, really close with Carolyn's mom, and her death really crushed me. And so I wrote about it a little bit. I don't actually think I'm going to share this this whole entry just because it's so personal. It's someone else's story and it's so personal. But I did say it was really scary. This was not the first funeral I went to. And I went with my mom, and it wasn't the first funeral I went to, and I'm not sure what made it so scary, but I just talk about how sad Carolyn looked and the whole family. And at the end of the funeral, I happened to be like the first one who stepped outside the church. And then shortly after, Carolyn's dad stepped out of the church, and he just grabbed onto me. And I don't think it was even intentional. Like, I mean, he had literally just buried his wife and the mother of his children. And he just grabbed me and hugged me. And again, I don't even think, I'm sure he doesn't even remember, but I remember, because I remember him hugging me and like holding his body, and like he was thin and like frail and fragile and vulnerable, and he was weeping. And I saw, like, he kind of realized after holding me really tight for like 30 seconds, and then he kind of pushed himself away, and then like he didn't even say anything. He just looked at me and had tears in his eyes. And then like I turned to my mom, and my mom turned to me, and we both were just kind of stunned. And that's like a core memory for me, was being hugged by this man, just because I was standing there. And I wrote a lot about that. Again, I'm not going to share this full entry because I've shared a lot today, and I am feeling a little bit raw, but I did want to share that story and just dedicate this episode to Fran. And yeah, I've just been thinking a lot about her since I read this entry a little while ago. I did promise you all a poem, so I'm going to read a cringy poem, and I did promise that it would be a hopeful one. In this entry, I've mentioned my bestie Dee. She goes by a couple different names, which you'll hear over the course of this podcast. When we were kids, we called her Dee. Her name's Katie. Hey, Katie. Shout out, Katie. And for some reason, I don't remember why, but my sister and my parents called her Cindy, like Cindy Lou Who from The Grinch. I think because she's like, when we were kids, she was like very sweet and like innocent and cute. I mean, she still is, but I don't know. Her nickname around my house was Cindy Lou Who, so I wrote this poem for her, and it's called I Knew a Girl Named Cindy. Cindy Lou Who is my very best friend. I might make her cry, but we laugh in the end. She is caring and trusting, though changing and adjusting. She doesn't always know what the story is about, but for her in the end, it will always work out. You can tell Cindy's life will be so good. She'll always remember her sweet childhood. She knows just what to say to cheer you right up. She doesn't like Sprite, she likes 7-Up. CSI and MSN are among her favorite things. She'll never admit how good she dances and sings. If anything about Cindy and I is clear, it's that if we're not friends forever, we will be next year. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Okay, everybody, that is this week's episode. It's a bit of a long one, and it takes some winding twists and turns. I hope you've enjoyed listening. I hope some of you will take me up on my invitation to come on this podcast and read some cringy journal entries from your past. If you are somebody who really wants to start journaling or wants to start writing poetry or publishing your work or building a writing practice, or maybe you've got a manuscript that you're working on, I help writers build a writing practice and birth their books every single day and would love to chat with you. You can reach me at www.doulaofwords.com. Until next time, big love.